What's up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome into another episode of Saints Daily, your home for everything to do with the black and gold. My name is Tim, and let's jump right into it. Uh, Earlier yesterday, the Saints announced their 55-man minicamp roster. One quick caveat, this does not include Xavier Harris. We talked about him yesterday. Everything is in place for him to sign with this team, but it has not been officially done yet. No official contract has been signed. It sounds like it's just waiting on him to sign. Um, he is expected to participate at the practices this weekend. So, quick reminder: rookie minicamp is slated to start May 8th through the 10th. Harris is expected to be there. This could just be, maybe some language in the contract. It could just be, as simple as him recovering from foot surgery that he had back in March. It is odd that the team hasn't announced an official contract with him, but right now, really no alarm bells are going off. So when you look at the rookie minicamp roster, you have all of the drafted players. You have the 10 undrafted free agents. And again, that list is not including Xavier Harris. What it does include is running back CJ Donaldson out of Ohio State, two offensive tackles, tight end Cody Hardy from North Carolina State, kicker Mason Shipley. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Keyshawn Silver, defensive line, USC. Suggs, defensive line, Wisconsin. Mike Heldman, Central Michigan edge, and two corners as well, one from Alabama, one from Southern Illinois. Um, you also have some returning players under contract. One of these players we'll go into a little bit later as well, and that's wide receiver Damen Alford. He went undrafted in 2025, but he was the first overall pick for the Calgary Stampeders in the CFL. So, there's some intrigue about him and where he might stand and if he might make this roster. You also have Elliot Davison, Easton Kilty, and a couple other players that are returning under contract. These are players that have pro careers or pro snaps under their belt, kind of getting another chance. Similarly, they have players that are not under contract that are tryout players, right? A couple players to call out specifically: quarterback Braylon Braxton out of Southern Mississippi, dual threat guy. Um, didn't really see any combine numbers for him. Couldn't really see anything pulled up, but I know his statistics. He's a dual threat quarterback. Probably somebody that you're going to look at potentially. Just you throw a flyer out there, but not anytime a quarterback's being brought in, you want to talk about quarterback, right? It's the position everybody wants to talk about. So that's why I brought him up. One really interesting one: South Carolina Gamecocks running back Rashul Faison. Um, will be a 26-year-old rookie. So for a running back especially, a little bit of a concern. But if you look at his numbers, you look at all of the scouting reports on him, this is not a player that I watched. I'm not going to pretend that I watched South Carolina games that often. I remember the name, but not someone that really stood out specifically to me. But he's an interesting prospect because of his age, but he does seem to have three down ability, and he could be one of those long shot guys that jumps off the page and does something really good during this mini camp, and maybe he makes a name for himself. That's a name I'm going to be looking out for personally. The one thing about him specifically, though, no special team snaps. According to, I believe it was ESPN, no special team snaps for him throughout his entire college career. So if he's going to make this team, he's going to have to learn special teams probably. Running back room is deep. I don't expect any, especially with the undrafted free agent that the Saints did sign out of Ohio State, CJ Donaldson. I don't expect that to be somebody that would make noise. But again, always want to call out those skilled position players. I think there's 5 offensive linemen that the Saints are also trying out. Uh, you know, all together, no names that I specifically remembered or noticed, but offensive line is always, I said it last time and I'll keep saying it. This is the position group that will take this roster as far as it can go. If the offensive line stays healthy, stays good, the top 5 offensive line, you could tell me this team wins 10 to 12 games and I'd believe it. Bringing in a punter, a long snapper, couple defensive linemen. One other one to really call out: former third round pick JT Woods. is going to be at the tryouts as well in rookie minicamp. He's somebody who's a former draft pick of Brandon Staley. So anybody who followed this team last year knows that Staley likes to bring in his guys. They know the system. Rumpf, Tyrell Burgess, Jonah Williams, all guys that were brought in onto this team at some point last year. Burgess and Rumpf specifically really stood out in a lot of snaps, right? I think Tyrell Burgess actually played very well whenever he was given any opportunity to be on the field, and Rumpf, he did okay. This is again just another name to look out for. A third round pick. He was never great, right? He's a defensive back. His his resume isn't super fantastic if you look at, PFF numbers or really just overall impressions. There's a reason why, he's currently a free agent. But again, familiarity, potentially a position group that he could get some leeway in, right? It's not a super deep position group on this team, so could be a very interesting name to look at as well. As I said, though, bringing in a long snapper, bringing in a punter, and they are also asking Younghoe Koo, the former Atlanta Falcons kicker, to come to rookie minicamp as well. So kind of makes you wonder, is there going to be special teams battles across the board, right? We all know returner is probably going to be a pretty decent battle during the minicamp offseason, maybe into preseason. Um, Kicker, right? You have your incumbent in Charlie Smith, made 75% of his field goals last year. Two of his misses were from 50 plus, with a long of 57 yards. So it's hard to really say, hey, this guy who attempted 16 field goals missed two from 50 plus was a 75% kicker, but the numbers are the numbers. Undrafted free agent Mason Shipley is also, again, going to be a rookie minicamp. Undrafted free agent out of Texas by way of Texas State. If you look at his 2025 numbers, he was 83% field goal percentage, 24 attempts, 20 made, 3 of 4 under 30 yards, perfect between 30 and 39, and perfect between 40 and 49, and missed 3 from 50 plus with a long of 53, and a career long in college of 60, which is what he achieved in 2024. Extra points for Charlie Smith, perfect on the year last year. He was 13 of 13. Last year for Mason Shipley, 48 of 48 on extra points. Throughout his career, he is 159 of 162 on extra points, so very, very solid there as well. Younghoe Koo is an interesting one. It felt like he broke his personal record against the Saints a couple years ago, and that was kind of his peak, and immediately he dropped off. There are some positions in sports that are weird. In football, I think any kicker, punter, those players, once they get into a funk, they it's hard to get them out of it, right? Other sports, right? If you're thinking of goalies for the most part, sometimes they get in their head and just they're weird, right? It's a weird position and it's hard to um get those players to really function if they're starting to struggle. So Young Koo last year had one of the funniest, just objectively funniest moments whenever the ball was snapped, held, and then he just randomly stopped mid kick. He kicked the ground, and it was an interesting. It was just, he struggled with the Falcons the last couple years after he again, decided to just have a career long against the Saints to beat the Saints after I think there was no offensive touchdowns that game, if it's the one I'm remembering correctly. Um, Kicker's a weird position. Maybe he comes in and makes noise, but it's just something to really call out. This is probably going to be a three-way kicker battle. You would hope and expect Charlie Smith to continue to prove himself and to do what he has shown he can do, and that is compete and win the starting job. And I hope he continues on to do it. I love the story. I love the player. I think that this is somebody that the Saints can bank on. He comes in and he kicks a game winner, a walk-off game winner against the Panthers. He's a guy I'm cheering for, and I hope he continues to do well. So obviously you want the Saints to get whoever they can, and you want to make them make the right choice, right? This is a team that has made the wrong choice at kicker plenty of times. If you believe Will Lutz was the wrong choice over Blake Grupe, Grupe did have a few really good years. I understand the salary cap reasons of why that happened, but you know, it's definitely something out there that you can definitely look at and say, okay, this is not a good choice. There was also a kicking battle, and I forget the two players' names, but the one went to the Washington Commanders, and I think he's still kicking in the league today. I forget the players' names. I should have written them down. But again, this is just a team that doesn't have the best history picking kickers. So hopefully they can stick to one guy. Hopefully whoever wins it, hopefully Charlie Smith or Shipley or against all odds Koo, does what they need to do. One thing that is interesting about Younghoe Koo though is he has 53 attempts under 30 yards. He is perfect under 30 yards. Yeah, I mean, you expect one block, one miss. Under 40 yards, right? So 30 to 39, he's 53 of 57. Then he really starts to struggle once you get over 40 yards, and that's not just a recent trend. He's always been accurate short, but his issues have always been that he cannot hit the long ball. So except for against the Saints, apparently. Maybe it's the stadium. Maybe it's the stadium, and the home games in the Superdome will be a good thing for him. Who knows? Obviously, like I said, though, bringing in a long snapper and a punter, I don't expect anybody to beat out Ryan Wright. But Caden Noonkester out of North Carolina State is the punter that's being brought in. Weird thing to call out about him, not really weird, but dude's 6'6". He's a big man. He averaged last year 43.5 yards per punt with a 39 net yards. So not spectacular, not bad, especially for college. 57 punts last year, 23 of them were inside the 20. So it's about a 40% clip. That's pretty good. He has a career long of 67, which he did twice in 2022 and 23, and last year he also had a long of 66 yards. So he's got a leg. Um, Dark horse, I wouldn't expect him to beat out the free agent signing that the Saints had last year, or this offseason in Ryan Wright. They spent money on a punter. I expect that punter to make the team. But who knows, right? I mean, you always want the best players. You would expect the free agent quarterback and Matt Flynn to easily beat out the third round rookie and Russell Wilson. Crazier things have happened, obviously. Another position that the Saints are adding to rookie minicamp is quarterback. And again, anytime quarterback's brought up, you want to talk about it. It's the position that everybody wants to talk about. It's the most important position in all of sports, right? Um, do you expect anybody who's being brought in on a tryout to actually make the team? Probably not, right? This team has Tyler Shuck as an unquestioned starter today. Spencer Rattler played relatively well, even though he only has one win on his resume. He is still somebody who I think the Saints probably are very comfortable with being his backup. Maybe there's some competition with him and Zach Wilson, but former second overall pick, Wilson obviously has all the talent in the world. I don't really see him going away. I think Zach Wilson, to kind of back up and talk about the Zach Wilson signing, yeah, I think we brought it up before, and there was a couple perspectives of it that I heard from other Saints media people, where they were basically saying this is a really good opportunity for Tyler Shuck to finally have someone to just bounce stuff off of. If you want to talk about a guy who was drafted into a high pressure situation, Zach Wilson, number two overall in the New York market to the Jets to be the Jets' savior, is a pretty good person to bring in. Shuck had a relatively, I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it was about as good as you could realistically hope last year, the ways where Shuck's season went. There are going to be games he's going to throw multiple interceptions. There are going to be games where people are going to look at those games and they're going to say Tyler Shuck lost that game for the Saints. Having somebody on the roster that he can just go to and talk to about it and who can say, hey, been there, done that, you're fine. I did it in the New York media, let alone, as a second overall pick. I think it's really, really beneficial to have him on this team. But outside of that, too, he's pretty mobile. He's got a big arm. He is honestly probably one of the better scout team quarterbacks you could ask for. And that's what Tyler Shuck did last year to really improve his game. If you ask Kellen Moore, anytime he's ever been asked about Tyler Shuck's development, and they've been asked a few times, what would have happened if you would have started Shuck instead of Rattler to start the season? And Moore always credits being scout team quarterback as part of his development. So, again, does Zach Wilson have a chance to be a starter in the NFL in the future? Probably not. I think at some point in time, the talent is there, but it's just too inconsistent. But you could do a lot worse as a scout team quarterback. Anyway, to get back to the topic, the two quarterbacks the Saints did invite to come back. Former second round pick that apparently the Saints were high on during his draft year, Kyle Trask, obviously of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is one of the quarterbacks, and the other one is Easton Stick. He played for Kellen Moore the year that Kellen Moore was the Chargers offensive coordinator in 2023. He has 4 starts to his name. I believe those were all in 23. He went 0-4, but he did complete over 65% of his passes for 237 yards per game, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. So, it could do worse. Again, veteran in the room if they do end up impressing and signing onto this team as like a third or a fourth quarterback. It's definitely one of those two players could be that veteran in the room, right? Stick is 30, Trask is 28, so they would be automatically immediately the oldest quarterbacks in the room, which is kind of crazy to think about if you look around the NFL. But um, it always helps to have an offensive coordinator and a quarterback, or I'm sorry, and a head coach that have played quarterback, and you can talk to in that lens as well. All right, let's jump into Damen Alford. Damen Alford was signed to the Saints back in January. He was the first overall pick by the Calgary Stampeders in the CFL draft in 2025 after he went undrafted in the 2025 NFL draft. Um, when the signing happened, it was one of those signings that you would make in Madden, right? You see the 6'6", 4'4", 40 guy playing wide receiver, undrafted. You can mold that player, right? Personally, I when it was done, I didn't really hear of Alford, and I looked into him, and his stats are okay. Um, is it reminds me a little bit of Brandon Coleman, where big dude, fast dude should be able to do it, right? Should be able to, even if you're a one trick pony, should be able to be a Sunday player. Um, I haven't really watched much of what he did. I saw a couple highlights from his time in the CFL. He seems faster than everybody on the field, but it is a different competition. His stats in college are kind of hilarious in a way. 20 receptions, 407 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So that means 25% of the time he caught a pass in the CFL, he scored a touchdown, which is again kind of hilarious. 20 yards per catch, very clearly a deep ball guy. Um, it's interesting to see, what the Saints are going to do at that position in general, right? And you start to feel bad for some of these guys, but right now, the wide receiver room, as it stands, in no particular order: Jordan Tyson, Chris Olave, Mason Tipton, Palmer, Polk, Bailey, Means, Alford, Lance, Ronnie Bell, Austin Jr., and Barryon Brown. That is 12 players. And like I said, you start to feel bad for some of these guys. You trade for Jalen Polk, right? And former second overall or second round pick, I believe with the Patriots, and you trade a late round pick for a flyer on the guy. You draft 3 wide receivers in one draft. You sign the 6'6" monster, out of the CFL. Guys like Austin Jr. who finally got their shot, and I thought he played well last year, and I think he was on the team 2 years ago too as a reserve. And I honestly thought anytime I ever saw Austin on the field, I thought he did well. I didn't think he played poorly. I think you could do worse for at wide receiver 5, and he's someone I think should be on a roster. But you feel bad for guys like that because is he going to beat out Tyson, Olave, Palmer, Polk, Vele, um, Barryon Brown? Lance, probably not, and to a similar vein is Polk and Palmer. Are they part of this team's future? Um, guys like Bub Means who just can't stay healthy, and unfortunately, the best ability is availability. You kind of start to feel bad for these people, but when you look at all of this, right, and you're like, okay, how is this this wide receiver that already plays pro in the Canadian Football League, how is he going to fit into this team's plans and in this team's future? Um, he's one of the more interesting players to call out specifically. You're going to get to see him at rookie minicamp for the first time in a Saints jersey and see what he's got. But that position is so deep, which is just night and day from even just a few weeks ago, right? Wide receiver was widely considered one of the worst position groups on this team. I'm on record of saying I didn't think it was as bad as many people thought, right? I thought that you have a pretty good core with Olave and Vele, and you could do much worse than guys like Austin. You could do much worse than figuring out what you have in Polk and Palmer, right? And you have that ability to have maybe not drafted a wide receiver in the first round and waited into the second or third and maybe have gotten, still a Lance, still a Barryon Brown, maybe a second round wide receiver or, a Surratt or a Chris Bell. Um, Regardless, 3 or 4 weeks ago, that was one of the worst positions on this roster, and it is now probably one of the deepest positions on this roster. Anybody who is trying to make this team, like Damen Alford, like any of the, people on the tryout list that were wide receivers, any of the guys who can't stay healthy, it is going to be a challenge at the wide receiver position. But that'll do it for today's episode of Saints Daily. Thank you so much for watching this. If you enjoyed it, press that like button. If you really enjoyed it, press that subscribe button. Share this with your friends. And as always, we'll catch you next time.